Hello everybody, welcome back to Practically Perfect in Every Way. 皆さんこんばんは。Practically Perfect in Every Way へおかえりなさい。Today is a lovely day here in Edinburgh. I feel like the spring has finally sprung, the flowers are blooming, the sun is out, and the days are getting longer. I feel like the winter is finally over, which is great. 今日はとても綺麗な日で、やっとエディンバラにも春が来たなって感じがします。お花が咲いてきたし、お日様も出てて、日がね、エディンバラ冬だと3時ぐらいにはもう暗くなっちゃうんですけど、やっと5時6時ぐらいまでずっと明るくなるようになったので、やっと冬が終わったなって感じがしています。I am working from home today and I'm recording this during my lunch break. I've had a really lovely weekend this weekend actually. I went to watch the new Bridget Jones movie with my flatmate and it was so nice. I am not like a big Bridget Jones fan or anything like that. I don't think I've actually watched all of the movies even. But my mum loves Bridget Jones and I know I used to kind of watch as she was watching it. And one of my friends recommended it to me, saying that it's really heartwarming and it's really nice. So I went to watch it and I cried so much. I don't want to spoil it because it's incredible and I want everyone to go and watch it. But it's just something about family love that just gets me. And especially now that I live far away from my family, it hits very deep in my heart. And so I cried a lot, I laughed a lot, it was really good. I really liked it. 今週末はとっても素敵な週末を過ごしてですね、ちょっとふと友達っていうかフラットメイトと新しいブリジット・ジョーンズの映画を見に行こうっていうことになって、私別にブリジット・ジョーンズのファンなわけでも何でもないんですけど、でもいつもお母さんが好きで見てたのはなんとなく横目で見てたぐらいな感じなんですけど、でも私の友達がすごいほっこりするから見た方がいいよって言われたので見に行きました。特にネタバレはしたくないのであんまり喋んないように頑張るんですけど、でもそういう家族愛がとても深く書かれてる映画になってて、特にもう私家族と離れて暮らしてるのでそのトピックにすごく弱くてボロ泣きしました。ちっちゃい頃は全然映画とかで泣かなかったんだけど、最近ダメですね。すぐ泣いちゃいますね。そんな感じでとっても素敵な週末となりました。So this week, I'm going to attempt to do this episode very, very, very unstructured and unplanned. Like I say, a lot of the weeks I normally tend to take notes on what I want to talk about and then start my episode. But this week I was just like, why not? Why not? Because I've got some things on my mind that I want to talk about. 結構毎週私これを撮るたびにどんなこと話したいかなっていうのをノートにまとめてから話すようにしてるんですけど、ちょっと今週は今ふと頭に上がってきたものがあったので、それについてボロっと喋ってみようかなと思います。もしぐちゃぐちゃになっちゃったらごめんなさい。Anywho, the topic I wanted to talk about is being independent and to stop being dependent. 今日私が話したかったのは依存しない方法、自立する方法。Now, I think in this society, there are a lot of advice around the world saying, oh, you should be independent, you should never depend on people, and you should be able to make yourself happy. Don't let other people make you happy. Don't expect other people to make you happy. Make yourself happy. And I truly believed in that advice and thought that, you know what, I'm the only one who can make myself happy and I'm going to try and make myself happy. and I've been working really hard on that. However, it is very tricky to not depend on people, because we're human beings and we're creatures of wanting to be in a community, wanting to be a part of a community, and needing help and working with people and all of that. So I don't think it's necessarily within our nature to be fully independent and just live on your own. And as I'm living abroad and living very, very, very far away from my family, I do feel like this topic of dependency is something that I struggle with a lot. So that's why I wanted to talk about it today. 結構今のね時代ってこう自立してなさいみたいな、人に依存しちゃダメ、依存しないように自立して生きていかなきゃみたいな考え方がすごく強いと思うんですね。で、私もそれはなんとなく自分でも信じてた部分があって、で、私を幸せにできるのは私だけだから、一生懸命私が自分を幸せにしてあげなきゃって思ってたんですけど、でもなんかこういざ考えてみると、やっぱ人間ってCM であったじゃないですか。長い棒に短い棒支え合ったら人になるってやつね。やっぱ人間ってこう共存していく生き物だし、誰かと一緒に生きていかないと生きていかれない生き物だと私はなんとなく思ってて、そういった意味でも自立して一人ぼっちで生きていくのが必ずいいかと言われたらそうではないのかなと最近思ってきて、で特にやっぱり今海外で暮らしてると、家族とか昔からの友達とかとすごく離れて暮らしてるので、この自立とか依存しないとかそういうことにすごくなんか考えさせられることが多いような気がしたので、今回はこのトピックについて話すことにしました。私もまだこのトピックは自分でもなんかこうちょっと悩んでるというか、日々アップダウンがあるトピックなので、皆さんと一緒に考えていけたらいいなと思います。First thing I wanted to talk about was the idea of being independent, what it is to be independent. And I heard somewhere, I forgot where, but it was someone in Japan, because I heard this in Japanese and that's what I remember. Someone saying that being independent is not necessarily living on your own and not having anyone around you who you can rely on. But being independent is to spread your dependency to different people, different communities, different outlets, which really shifted the idea of what it means to be independent for me, because I felt like, I felt like being dependent was kind of like a weakness almost. Like people make out being dependent on something as something very negative and toxic. And so I was trying so hard to be on my own, being happy on my own, because that's what I thought independent meant. But after hearing that, it really shifted my idea of being independent to like, oh, I don't necessarily have to be alone and be able to sustain myself alone, because that's, to be honest, impossible. We all need to talk to someone. We all need help from people sometimes. And it's not weak to ask for help and depend and rely on people. It's just that maybe you shouldn't depend on one person only, but have multiple people, multiple communities to rely on. Which, it really made me feel better about asking for help and wanting to spend my time with people and have that sort of human connection, and felt less guilty about that. So that's one thing I wanted to talk about in terms of, first of all, understanding what it is to be independent. まず自立するということはどういうことなのかっていうことについて話したかったんですけど、私これを話をどっかで聞いたんですけど、ちょっとどこだったか忘れちゃったんですけども、多分有名な話だと思うんですけど、日本の中ではこう自立するっていうことはこう全く誰にも依存しないで一人で生きていくわけじゃなくて、依存先をたくさん作ること、依存先を分散させることだって言ってる人がいて、それすごく頭がいいなって私は思って、なんとなく人間ってこう依存するっていうのがすごくこう弱いみたいな、助けを求めたりするのが弱いみたいななんかイメージがあるような気がして、だから自立っていうと誰にも助けを求めないでも一人で生きてかれるみたいなのが自立っていう感じに捉えちゃいがちだと思うんですけど、そうじゃなくて別に人に助けを求めるのが悪いわけじゃなくて、こう人に助けを求めるんだけど、その助けを求める先をいろんなところに分散させていくのが自立していくっていうことなんだよっていうのは、すごく自分の中でこうマインドシフトになったというか、依存って別に依存自体が悪いことじゃないんだなと思って、人に助けを求めてもいいんだけど、ある一定の人だけとか少人数だけに偏ってしまうのは良くないんだなっていう、すごくこう自分の気持ちが楽になった考え方だったので、それは、結構よく考えることです。Anyways, so why is it bad to depend on one person specifically? For example, depending on your partner.Being codependent with your partner, why is that really bad? I think the reason for that is because when you depend on this one person to make you feel better, or to make your day, or to build your life together, what happens really is that when things don't go well, or that person isn't feeling great,because of that expectation that you have of that person, of like, I expect you to make me feel happy, and I expect you to build a life together with me. When things don't go as planned, or when that person's not feeling great and can't give you what you expect from them, you kind of get let down.And so whatever the other person's doing impacts you a lot. And what that can lead to is you trying to control that person to make sure that you get the outcome that you're expecting from that person, if that makes sense. And I think that's where dependency gets very, very, very toxic.And I think that's why a lot of people say, be independent, don't depend on your partner, have your own life. It's not necessarily bad, I think, I'm going in a bit of a tangent here, but that's why I think dependency can become a bit unhealthy. じゃあなぜ依存がそんなに悪いと考えられているのかってことなんですけども、例えばこれを恋愛で考えるとして、自分が、パートナーに依存してるとするじゃないですか。依存してる時ってこう自分と相手の境界線が結構ぼやぼやしてて、こう相手がしてくれる行動とかによって自分の気持ちが変化していくようになっちゃうと思うんですね。でそれをするとどうなるかっていうと、こう相手に自分をこういう風に幸せにしてもらうとか、相手とこういう風な人生を作っていくっていう、なんかこういう期待ができてしまって、 でその期待が裏切られた時にすごい悲しみとか、裏切られた気持ちができちゃうと思うんです。だからこう相手のアップダウンによって自分もアップダウンしちゃうみたいな。でそうなっていくと、じゃあ自分がこう相手に期待したことがちゃんと叶うようにって、多分人間自然と相手をコントロールするようになっていくと思うんですね。こう相手が自分の期待に沿うように、もっとこういう風にしてほしい、ああいう風にしてほしい、もっとこういう人であってほしいって。でそれはあなたの自己満足だから、そういう風にどんどん自分と相手がこうぐちゃぐちゃになってきちゃって、相手をコントロールしちゃって、そういう関係性ってすごくなんか不健康だなって思うんですよね。難しいことなんですけど、そういった意味で依存ってちょっと、怖くなっちゃうのかなっていう、と私は思ってます。And I don't necessarily think, like I said, I think it's like absolutely impossible for people to not rely on other people in their lives. And like you can hear it in the way I use the word dependency. It's a bit like addiction when it's excessive and when it's exceeding the quote-unquote normal, I don't like the word normal, but amount, that's when it becomes problematic. So I don't think it's necessarily bad to be dependent on people if it is a healthy amount. And to be honest, especially in romantic relationships or families, children and parents, it's impossible to avoid dependency. We are all kind of dependent on each other, and there's no way avoiding that, because we're all human and that's just the way we are. So I don't think it's necessarily bad to be dependent or bad to have someone you want to rely on, but what is bad is when that is excessive and when that is completely narrowed down to one person that you rely on. I think that's when it becomes very unhealthy. さっきも言ったみたいに、人間ってちょっと依存してないと生きれないというか、なんて言うんだろう、人に頼って生きていかないと、一人ぼっちじゃなかなか生きていけない生き物だと思うので、そういった意味で依存が必ずしも悪いものだとは私は思わなくて、依存でなんかなんて言うんだ日本語で、アディクション、中毒みたいになっちゃって、こう量が健康な量を超えてしまうと良くないっていうものなのかなと思うので、やっぱり恋人もこう長く付き合っていけば、それだけこうね、愛着もあるし恩もあるし、依存してしまうのはある程度は当たり前だし、家族なんて言ってみたら、子供と親はもう完全に依存した、結構依存、特に子供は親に依存していかないと生きれない生き物だと思うので、そういった意味でも必ずしも悪いものだとは思わないんですけど、とにかくその依存先が一箇所に集中しちゃうと、そこがダメになったら自分も一緒に倒れちゃうので、そういった意味で依存先を分散させるのが大切なのかなと思います。So the things that I struggle with at the moment is, like I said, I live very far away from my parents, my family, and a lot of my childhood friends. And so a lot of the time I feel quite alone in this country. I'm absolutely not. I have friends here, I have my mentors, I have my colleagues, I have my boyfriend, but sometimes I long for that sort of relationship I have with my mum, where I can just rely on her and just kind of take all the weight off of my shoulder and just be like, okay, just tell me what I need to do. So I feel a bit like I'm constantly fighting this massive world by myself, and that's when I feel very alone and very exhausted trying to figure everything out by myself. And because of this, I think the closest person that I have in this country right now is my partner, my boyfriend. And so I do feel like I rely on him a lot for figuring out different things, or when I'm like in a really bad mood, I would call him and he would tell me all these things to make me happy. And it's lovely, but also I get very scared that I feel a bit dependent on him, because I feel like, I rely on him sometimes to make me feel better, which is obviously it's natural because we've been together for 3 years and that's the sort of relationship we built together. And also when I don't have my family close to me, sometimes you just need someone right there next to you to just give you a little hug and be like, you're doing fine. So that's something that I struggle as someone who's moved away from their family, and I would love if anyone, I don't know if anyone's listening, but if anyone's listening, if you have any way that you handle these sort of feelings, of how to feel less guilty for relying on people, but also not relying on them too much, if that makes sense. I don't know. I think it's a very complicated thing, and I think it's a difficult thing to navigate. At least I am aware that I am a little bit, I rely on my partner a lot, and I'm aware of that. It is a very tricky thing to navigate, I think, especially when you live abroad or live very far away from all the people that you grew up with. Because I feel like family, it's not, but a lot of the times that sort of family love feels unconditional. And luckily I have families that I feel like will be there for me no matter what happens. Whereas friendships and relationships feel a lot more fragile than that. And so it makes me feel very scared, putting a lot of myself onto those relationships. But that's also my problem, where I'm quite skeptical about friendships and relationships from my past experience. I think that's something I need to work on, to be able to fully trust myself and my partner and my friends. But yeah, that's something I struggle with quite often. ここは別に何のアドバイスの場所でもないんですけど、私が結構自分で海外に移住した人として、お母さんとお父さんと離れて暮らして、それは結構みんなそうだけど、離れて暮らしてる人としてよく悩むのは、やっぱり身近にバッと頼れる人がいないから、結構私は彼氏さんに頼ってしまうんですね。悲しい時とか辛い時とか、私の彼氏はすごくそれを慰めてくれるのが上手で、上手にそれを慰めてくれて、 私を泣き止ませてくれたりとかするわけなんですけども、で私はそういうのをしちゃうときにいや自分で本当はこうやって自分を慰められるようになんなきゃなとか思ったりとか、これは依存してるんだろうなとか思ったりとか、彼氏さんとの関係が深くなっちゃうのすごくギルティーに思っちゃうところがあって、ぜひ聞いてる人いるか分かんないけど、もし聞いてる人がいて共感することとかコツとかがあったら教えてほしいんですけど、そういうのは良くないかなとか思っちゃったり、でもそれもきっと私って結構意外と恋愛観とか友情観とかが冷めてるというか、過去の経験から意外といつでもこの関係性っていつ終わってもおかしくないんだよなって思っちゃってる自分がいて、そこを多分直していかなきゃいけないのかなっていうのもあるけど、家族は絶対的な、私はラッキーなことに何があっても味方でいてくれるような家族がいるから、家族は絶対的な味方だから、でもその家族がそばにいないから、そういった絶対的な味方が自分にいなくて、でそういうホロホロした関係に頼っちゃってるみたいな、そういう言葉にするのが難しいんですけど、人に頼ることを、家族じゃない人たちに頼ることをすごくギルティーに思っちゃうというか、自分依存してるのかなって思って人に頼ってるから、もしここの友情が途切れたりとか、彼氏さんと別れたりとかしたら私生きてかれるのかなとか思っちゃったりとか、そういった意味で結構悩むことが多かったりします。So, how do I deal with this situation? Like I said, I'm still going through it. I still think about it a lot. And it's not that I have a healthy relationship with the people around me, but at least things that I do to help with this. There are some things that I feel like it kind of helps me with this. Is that number one, I gentle parent myself. I've watched, I didn't know there was a term for this, for what I was doing to myself. But I saw an Instagram reel of someone doing this and I was like, oh, that's what it means. But basically what gentle parenting means is that when you make a mistake, or when things go wrong, you just say, it's okay. You just kind of take a third person perspective from yourself, objective perspective, and be like, Rianne, it's okay. You're trying really hard and you did this part. Yeah, this part you made a mistake, but that's okay, that's life. You're learning and that's okay. And you kind of talk to yourself as if you're another person that you're relying on, and you kind of gentle parent yourself as if your parents have done when you were little. And that sometimes helps, knowing that, and it kind of gives me confidence knowing that, I don't necessarily have to rely on someone to make myself feel better, but I can actually make myself feel better. It doesn't always work, but sometimes that works, and that's really nice. こっからはちょっと私がいくつかやってることでこの自分の負の依存サイクルから抜け出そうとするのを助けてくれることなんですけど、まず1個目は自分を育ててあげること、優しく育てること。英語で gentle parenting っていう言葉があるんですけど、 こう自分が第三者の立場になって、例えば何か失敗したことがあったら、リアン大変だったね、でも頑張ったね、ここはできたし、これもできたし、ここはできなかったけど、でもまた次それは頑張ればいいから、よく頑張った、ここまでって、こう第三者みたいな立場から自分に、実際私これ自分に話しかけたりとかして、ちょっと怖いかもしれないけど、話しかけたりとかして、こう自分の心を落ち着かせるたりします。でこれやっていくと、なんかちょっと自信がつくというか、自分で自分の気持ちをこんなに落ち着かせることができるんだって、ちょっと自信がつくような気持ちになれます。なのでそれは一つの方法かなって。Another thing that I do is to shift my focus from the relationships I have. I think, like I said, I'm quite cynical about friendships and relationships, in that I don't fully believe in forever, if that makes sense. Which is sad, I know, but I think it's my past experiences that made me think, sometimes friendships end and sometimes relationships end, and it's not necessarily bad that it ends, but it just does sometimes. And I kind of have that in the back of my mind. So when I'm kind of relying on my friends or my partner, I think that's why I kind of panic a little bit, because I'm like, oh my God, I'm relying on these people to make myself feel better. What if these people disappear from my life? How am I going to make myself feel better again? And I think that's when my energy is put towards something very negative and heavy and toxic. So what I like to do is to shift my focus away from things like that. For example, if I feel like I'm focusing a lot on my relationship with my partner, and I feel like I'm relying a lot on my partner to make myself feel better, then I would make the effort to plan things with my friends, so that I'm not spending all of my time with my partner, but I am separating that and to spend time with my friends. Or I'll plan something that I want to do by myself, like going on a walk, going on a run, reading a book in a cafe, things like that makes me happy by myself. And kind of putting more energy towards those things takes that toxic energy away from everything that I was putting into my relationship, and it takes that pressure away. And I think that really helps in terms of my relationship with my partner, but also my view on dependency and dependency itself. 私がもう一個やるのは、こう焦点をずらすことということで、例えばちょっと今週すごい彼氏に頼りっきりだなみたいな、すごいなんか彼氏のことばっか気になっちゃうなっていう時があったら、あえてこう友達を誘って友達との時間を作ったりとか、自分の空き時間を全て彼氏と過ごすんじゃなくて、こう自分が好きなこと、散歩とかランニングとか本読みにカフェに行ったりとか、そういった自分時間に使ったりとかして、こうエネルギーをやっぱりこのエネルギーをこう移動させていくんですね。私は結構やっぱ過去の経験からも、なんか友情とか恋愛がこう一生続くっていうことをあんまり信じれなくて、なんかいつかは友情が終わることもあるし、この恋愛関係がいつかは終わって別れるかもしれない。別にそれは悪いことじゃなくて、人生ってやっぱそういうことがあるから。 でもそういった時に自分がすごくそういう人たちに頼りすぎてると、もし私この人がいなくなっちゃったらどうやって自分を幸せにすればいいだろうかってなんか心配になってきちゃって、でそうなるとその人たちの関係性にすごく力を注いじゃうようになるんですね。でそうなった時に私すごい力変なところに注いでるなって気づいたら、ちょっと一歩下がって自分の幸せのための時間を増やしたりとか、自分一人でできるアクティビティに時間を割いたりとか、ちょっとそうやって、焦点をこう移していくと少し心が楽になるような気が私はします。The last thing that I try to do, I don't think I necessarily always am able to do, but I try to do, is to have multiple goals. I also had this probably in someone's YouTube video or something, but I love listening to podcasts about psychology and stuff like that, and I think I've heard of it. I've heard that somewhere. But apparently it's really important to set multiple goals. When you have a goal, one goal that you're so set on, when that goal isn't going well, you're just bound to feel really bad. And especially when that sort of goal is built around other people. For example, you say, I want to go here with this person, and that's your goal. You kind of have to control the other person to be able to achieve those goals. Another example would be, I'm going to be married by this year. You're going to have to control your partner to be able to achieve those goals. You can't achieve those goals by yourself. And that's why I think it's really important to have multiple goals set. So for me, I have a career goal. I would love to live in the UK and be able to settle here. That's my big goal, right? But I also have goals in terms of I'm doing this podcast because I want an outlet where I can be creative. I am doing like a little research project on the side for my professor, which also is another place where I can kind of focus my energy on. I want to travel with my friends. But if it doesn't happen, that's okay. I want to start volunteering and kind of putting my need for human connection there and satisfying my need for human connection there. So having multiple different goals in different aspects, it doesn't have to be big. It could also be like, I'm going to try and save however many pounds every month. Even things like that. It really helps shift all the focus away from one little thing, but kind of put healthy amount of focus into different things. So if one thing goes wrong, it's okay because you have other goals that you can work towards, and I think that's a really healthy way to approach life. 最後、私が、依存を防ぐというかために結構いいなって思ったのは、これもどっかのポッドキャストだか YouTube のビデオだかで見たと思うんですけど、こうゴールをたくさん増やすこと、結構いろんな人がこう他の誰かと一緒じゃないと達成できないゴールを持ってると思ってて、例えばここの国に誰々と行くとかね、あとは何歳までに結婚するとか、そういうゴールを立ててると必ず一人だけでは達成できなくて、相手の人をも一緒に動いてくれないと達成できないじゃないですか。そうなると相手の人が自分の期待に沿ってくれないときにすごくこう 絶望しちゃったりとか、期待に沿ってくれない時にもうその人をコントロールしなきゃって思っちゃったりとかすると思うんですね。そういった意味でもそういったゴールがあってもいいんですけど、それだけに全部を集中しないで、例えば私だったら趣味のギターをやるとか、このポッドキャストを運営するのも、これも私の焦点をいろんなところに分散するための一つでもあり、あと私はお仕事頑張ってイギリスに移住するっていうゴールもあるし、ちょっと今は忙しいのであれなんですけど、忙しさが止まったらボランティアを始めて誰かのためになることをする。そういった風に焦点を分散させていくと、一個のことがたとえうまくいかなくても他のことで自分の幸せとか安定を見つけられるから、そういった意味でもすごくそうやってたくさんのいろんなゴールを持っていろんなことに向かって自分の焦点を分散させるのがすごく健康的なんじゃないかなと思います。So that was my episode on dependency. Like I said, I'm still struggling with this as someone who's moved all the way across the sea and to the opposite side of the world from where I'm from. And I don't think there's necessarily a one-size-fits-all cure for this. I think a lot of people do struggle with this. So if anyone's listening, then you have tips and tricks on how you deal with dependency and how you deal with loneliness in your life, please do let me know, and I would love to see if that fits into my lifestyle and if I can incorporate that into my life. But yeah, I hope that it helped some of you at least feel like you're not alone and you're not the one going crazy, because I think a lot of the 20s or even your 30s it's quite lonely. A lot of it is just you feeling like you're fighting alone against the world. It's really not like that, but I know that that's how it can feel like sometimes. So yeah, you're not alone if you feel like that. I'm right there feeling that with you. And I hope that eases your mind a little bit. ということで今日は依存についてちょっと自分で最近思ってることを話してみました。私もまだねこうやって悩んでるし、こういうのって多分全てが一気に解決策がボーンってあるものではないと思うので、もし聞いてる方がいらっしゃいましたら、何かねこういうのもいいよっていうのがあったら教えてほしいなと思います。でも少しでも誰かが、結構やっぱ20代って孤独感が強めの10年間じゃないかなって、30代になってもねちょっと強いかもしれないですけど、特に20代たまに私 VS 世界みたいな気持ちになる時があって、結構ね孤独感が強いと思うので、そういった意味でももし聞いてる人の中で私だけじゃないんだなこう思ってるのはみたいな、結構みんなそう思ってるんだなって感じで、少しでも肩の荷が下りたらいいかなと思います。Anyways, thank you so much for listening. I hope you enjoy the song of the week after this. But otherwise, I'll see you next week. Bye bye. 今週も聴いてくれてありがとうございました。この後の今週の曲もお楽しみいただければと思います。それではまた来週お会いしましょう。バイ。